Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm Matt. I'm the host. With me this week are Liz and Joe, my fantastic co-hosts. So, guys, let me ask you a question. What was the last movie you saw in a theater?
In a theater?
Yes, in a theater. Not the last movie you saw. Last movie you saw in a theater. Last movie you went to see.
Wow.
I know my answer to mine, and mine's a little bit of a weird one. What was yours, Liz?
I genuinely do not remember. I have not been in a theater since before the pandemic.
Yeah.
The last movie that I've gone to see was I went to go see Cronenberg's The Brood because it was re-airing at my local art house. So, yeah. That is the last movie I saw in a theater.
The last movie I saw in a theater, I am pretty sure would have been 2020 because it would have been in February of 2020 before the pandemic really hit up here in Edmonton. I am 95% sure it was the second Godzilla movie from the American Legendary Films trilogy. I don't know why, but that's what I think. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that movie came out before 2020, but I honestly don't remember. But yeah, I am asking this only because I honestly don't know. I think pretty much 95% of my entertainment time is video game.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty much almost all video games or streaming shows or movies on something like Amazon or Netflix or what have you. I think that's how I get most of my media.
Yeah.
So it's just something I'm thinking of, mostly because we've talked about Fallout for the past couple of weeks and Fallout's show on Amazon right now. We did a post on the site about what Warcraft stories would make a good movie. And I was looking at it and thinking, I still think I liked the Warcraft movie just fine. I just felt like it could have used a solid 20 minutes of editing. Just edit 20%, 20 minutes of this movie out.
So many movies could use that.
Yeah, I don't know, but I didn't think it was okay. Anyway, we should probably talk about other things than this because this is not necessarily what we're going to talk about. But I will say this. I do want to talk about the Pandaria, WoW Remix Pandaria.
Remissed.
Yes. Unfortunately, though, when you say that, I keep thinking Remus, as in Romulus and that'll get us back on the pre-show topics if I'm not careful. But I do want to ask, have you guys been playing it? Because I stopped. I just didn't feel like I had the time. That's
been the majority of my WoW time lately. Like, I'm not even going to lie. I'm enjoying the freedom of it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is going to sound maybe bad, but like what I'm doing in Mist of Pandaria Remix doesn't matter. There's no pressure. I don't have to worry about gear. I don't have to worry about gems. I don't have to worry about, doing the quote unquote right thing. I'm literally just running around as a Kultiran druid, blasting things with moonfire. And it has been very freeing and very fun. We did the Siege of Orgrimmar raid yesterday as a guild, which was a ton of fun. Trying to and it's not like it was back at level. Like the content's not massively difficult. It's not exactly a pushover, but it was really fun to hear people who, because we're doing it mainly as Alliance, as a guild, seeing people that never did Siege of Orgrimmar as Alliance and noticing the differences, like going through and seeing like, oh, you guys you Alliance never had to fight this particular trash with all the turrets. That's clearly a bias. And then the Horde didn't have to fight the tunnel with all the why can I never remember the Calaxy? Never had to fight that, and like the little subtle differences. It was a lot of fun. So I've really been enjoying it. I think that it is super, super fun and super cool. And I really enjoy the barriers being pulled down for it. Like, you don't have to go to a guide. You don't have to worry about gear because literally everything just throws gear at you. And like, you don't have trinkets, you don't have rings. Who cares? It doesn't matter. You just have fun. And like the thing that I think is one of the coolest things they put in there that I've been enjoying is the gems on the tinker sockets and cogwheel sockets on the gear that let you pick up abilities from other classes or random, spell effects. Like, I'm just going to summon meteors out of the sky and stun you. So like I've had my boom chicken rolling around like a Pandaren monk. I've had my disengage. I've had a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's fun. It's like little elements of what we were talking about are really cool in WoW Classic when they were doing the Season of Discovery, but on retail. And then at the end of it, I get to keep the character. So yay! Like I've been having a blast.
Liz, have you been playing it?
I have, but I haven't been playing it. Clearly not enough. I was talking a little in the show about how I've been playing a lot of Diablo 4, and I'm like way behind because it's been out for 2 weeks and I'm not level 100 yet. But then I feel the same way about WoW Remix because I'm level 25 in Remix, which, feels 25. That's a fair amount of levels. But also, I am really far behind everyone else because, like Joe said, my guild did Siege of Orgrimmar yesterday, and I'm not high enough level to join them.
Since the raids reset every day, are they still is Siege of Orgrimmar still max level? Do you still need to be level 70 to do it?
You have to be. You can do it at 60.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not level 60, so here I am.
But the thing is, you don't have to be 60 to do the other stuff if you wanted to. You could literally join a group and do the dungeons and stuff like that with with people multiple years.
Strangers.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, you don't have to. That's the thing. You can literally go you can take 470s and your 25 and go do dungeons and it's fine. It's just that's what I mean. When it says just having fun, that's what it is. So, and the levels come really fast because your cloak, as you level up, that experience. Oh man. Woo! Sorry. This is the one positive thing I've had in the last week. I'm really excited about it.
Okay. So while we're talking about that, then let's talk about the frog farmers. Because this is something I only recently found out. Apparently, this was an exploit or something.
Oh,
so I'm going to...
Go ahead, Liz.
It's you can't really call it an exploit.
It's been here for years. Sorry, that's my one little Cool J reference.
Well, if you played Mists of Pandaria when it was new content, you will remember the frogs on the Timeless Isles, which you would go and farm to get lesser charms of good fortune, and they'd spawn fast, and you just you'd kill frogs and kill frogs. Frogs. Horrible, boring, tedious work. But of course, people in WoW Remix, they're like, hey, these frogs are here, and we can kill them for lesser charms of good fortune, which we can turn in for, for caches of the cache rewards and get gear, gems, bronze. So they were doing nothing but farming frogs. Nothing.
Yeah.
And this creates kind of an inherent imbalance because you have the people playing normally, doing quests, doing dungeons, doing raids, playing to have fun, just playing, who are now way far behind the curve. And you are trying to do groups with people. There are groups out there that in the group finder will say, we only want frog farmers. We only want people who have gotten all of these cloak upgrades and are way ahead of the pack. And, this is not fun. There is no world in which this is a fun experience. And so Blizzard nerfed the frogs. I believe they no longer drop lesser charms of good fortune, so you can't quite do that farm. And then, of course, farmers found something else that spawned really fast that you could kill. And then there was something else, and Blizzard has been following along after, kind of nerfing these places where you can get hyper spawns that come up really fast, and you can just farm them, get stuff. And I mean, a lot of them are the same as they were back when this was new. But Blizzard has taken it a step farther, and I'm actually really surprised by this. That first, that at level 50, 60, and 70, all players who didn't necessarily incessantly farm frogs will get bonus bronze. Just reach these levels, and you will get a whole bunch of bronze for a total of 40,000 bronze just for leveling up. Just for leveling. So it's kind of evening the playing field a little bit. But Blizzard has also said that players who killed an unreasonably large number of gulp frogs prior to the loot bug fix will have their cloak nerfed to bring their power kind of down a little bit. So I think that's interesting that Blizzard is actively going in and saying, okay, this is not as we intended, and we're rolling back your cloak. And they're kind of trying to equalize the sort of bronze earnings everyone gets, even if you didn't spend hours killing frogs.
Dang, that's not something they've ever really done before. I mean, I guess
it's
a few times, but yeah, that is pretty surprising. I mean, I remember when Martin Fury dropped that person got pretty hammered, but that was like a straight up super exploit item that he never should have had. So yeah. That's pretty interesting. That's not something I was expecting. Huh.
Yeah, I think it's a good response to it. Although I will say there's a comment in chat from Toa that there was a Twitter comment a while back saying that they should limit endgame to Raid Finder or Auto LFG for normal plus modes on Remix. I don't like that idea because here's the deal. People are going to find something else to break or do something else with. And if you limit the content, you're sort of limiting options for players that are doing it legitimately, and that's never cool. I mean, and maybe I'm the odd man out or whatever. Them exploiting it didn't bother me at all because it doesn't affect me at all. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I'm not trying to do groups with them. I'm doing groups with my guild. I'm doing the content solo when I'm not doing that or doing scenarios. And so like, I'm not pugging groups, and maybe that's bad. And I understand that it is a problem, but like,
no, I don't think it's bad to not be pugging groups, if that's what you're saying. Whether or not it's bad to be, I get why they're doing it. I think it's a good adjustment. I also kind of agree though that I don't really care when other people because like I said, I don't do it, and so it doesn't really affect me. I've kind of accepted that. But I mean,
I'm just here to collect sweet transmog with my bronze.
That's actually another thing I wanted to talk about because I mentioned it specifically. I'm of the opinion that right now, WoW Remix Mr. Pandaria is probably the best way to farm transmog looks from Mr. Pandaria.
Hard agree.
If you want those looks, if nothing else, the sheer volume of raid resetting. This is the thing I wanted to ask you guys though, because this I don't know because I haven't gotten to it. Does anything drop in these raids when you run?
No.
So it's just purchasable, right?
It's the item set transmogs are purchasable with bronze only. The stuff that drops in raids is the scalable gear that drops everywhere else.
So if you want a transmog look, you just buy it.
Yeah, you just go and buy it. And literally everything's open.
Yeah, most stuff is bronze, but then if there's like special stuff like the shoulders off of the Tusk of Manaroth off of Garrosh, those require the bones that he drops. And so you'd need to kill him 20 times, which would mean killing him once a day, 20 times or
comment at higher difficulties you get more bones of Manaroth from Garrosh.
Correct.
Okay. And these aren't soloable. You do have to raid them, correct? Like you do actually need to bring a bunch of people with.
You do have to do the raids, yes.
But with people. It's not like you can't just do it like you can do it on live where you.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So the sheer volume of stuff I'm seeing people buy. The one, we did a post about the Tusk of Manaroth, and that's pretty amazing. There's also the artifact weapon that he used to drop, the heirloom.
Mm-hmm.
He used to drop heirlooms for everybody. Like he had heirlooms, one-handed sword, two-handed mace, like two-handed axe, staff, bow. You just pretty much had an heirloom weapon for everybody. And most of the looks were like various classic horde things. And that's still the case, correct? It's the exact same heirloom. It's just dropping. You can buy it now, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's correct. I didn't look at that though.
I looked at it because I had the axe since we actually killed Mythic Garrosh in the guild I was in at the time, and that was I think it was the last time I did any kind of like actual pushing content. And I remember getting both I got the Zalato, whatever it is, desecrated image of Gorhal. I got the mythic one off of Garrosh, and I got the heirloom. I got the heirloom axe too. So I used to transmog both of those, like one in one hand, one in the other. Actually, for a little while, I was actually just using them because why wouldn't you? So yeah, but that's really cool to me that it's that good for transmog. Go ahead, Liz.
I do think we should rewind a tiny bit to say that you can buy the Tusks of Manaroth.
Yeah, I was talking about this, didn't I?
Yeah, I know you, but you didn't.
Oh, okay. I'll just come right out and say this. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, and you didn't go out and say what you need to get to buy them is bronze. A lot of bronze, like 38,000 bronze, but also Bones of Manaroth, which Garrosh drops. So if you are one of the people who has killed Garrosh 100 times and not gotten the Tusks of Manaroth to drop, now you can go into Remist and kill him and collect Bones of Manaroth off of him, and you 20 of them get the Tusks of.
Yeah, and Joe just pointed out that they drop more the higher difficulty you're fighting him on.
Yes.
So if you're actually fighting him on Mythic, he'll drop more bones. If you're fighting him on Normal, I think it's 1 bone.
Normal is 1. I believe Heroic is 4, and I know Mythic is more, but I don't know how much.
Yeah, and I mean
the heirloom weapons. I'll just read this straight out. The Tusks, it's, as Liz said, 38,500 bronze and 20 bones of Manaroth. The heirloom weapons are 8,000 bronze and 2 bones of mana per heirloom weapon. And there's a lot of them. Like I said, one-handed sword, two-handed axe. There's bow,
staff, mace.
Yeah. There's a
Tons
bunch.
of them.
So if you've basically got a ton of bronze, they're going to give you 40,000. Keep that in mind. They're going to give you 40,000 bronze. Maybe get some Manaroth get some Garrosh kills in, and start buying yourself a bunch of heirlooms if you would like to.
And the other thing to keep in mind, we talked about this last week too. When we're talking about you're going to need a ton of bronze. Bronze is not that hard to come by. Not only are there moats just strewn about the world, and you just get a ton of it from everything you do. Old gear gets recycled into bronze. You literally have a button as an extra action button you can hit that lets you just scrap your gear as you get new stuff into bronze, because there's no need for gold, because you have no repair bill. There is no transmog cost. You don't have to worry about anything aside from like maybe picking up some food, but even then they throw so many potions and everything else at you that doesn't really matter. You just get bronze. I bought like 4 or 5 transmogs yesterday randomly. It's like, oh, I have a ton of bronze. What can I buy? Oh, 5 complete sets of transmogs? Sure. How much more do I need for the other stuff? Cool. I'll just keep doing stuff. It's fine.
I have one more comment about the Tusks of Manaroth. Currently, there is a bug at which the Tusks of Manaroth cannot be learned by non-plate wearers, but that is a bug. Blizzard is going to fix it. So if you are a shaman who really wants to be wearing the Tusks of Manaroth, cool, just hang on. It's going to get fixed soon.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Let's do that with absolutely everything else in the game. Thank you. But since we're done talking about that, let's actually talk about another thing that will help transmog farmers, namely that this is something they did earlier this month, and we didn't get to post out right away because some jerk claimed it and then didn't write it for a week. But anyway, they haven't made... You can't say that all raids are soloable exactly, because there's still a couple fights that are pretty dicey, and you might have to duo them.
This is Battle for Azeroth.
Yep, I did try to say it. If I didn't say the word Battle for Azeroth, I'm sorry.
It could have just been edited out in my... But
regardless, this is a 10.2.7 patch for Dragonflight. The various raids for Battle for Azeroth, raids, the end game for that expansion, have seen significant changes to make them easier to solo. One isn't necessarily soloable. Like, for instance, Crucible Storms is pretty hard to solo.
Yeah, but
because it's doable. For some classes, it's pretty easy to do. Like a paladin could probably do it pretty, because you can clear the debuff. There's a buff that goes on your character called Promises of Power that increases your power, but also increases the damage you take. So if you've got a lot of stacks of it, they'll be like hitting you for like all your health, and you'll die. A paladin can go, oh, I've got too many stacks, boop, and take it off.
It's like any other soloing challenge. You really have. It's a tight DPS check. But
even for even though we're like three expansions down the road, it is.
Just that debuff is so harsh.
Yeah, but I'm going to read through some of these. Just actually, Liz, you want to read through them, and then Joe and I can react if we feel like it.
You go.
First up is Uldir. Mithrax doesn't cast Oblivion Sphere, and Critical Mass still casts, but it does not prevent him from going into phase 2, which means that essentially if he's casting Critical Mass a lot, you can burn him into phase 2. You don't have to worry so much about keeping it from going on. Gahoon, he doesn't root people anymore if they've got Power Matrix, and the orb that you just need to grab the orb. It will no longer slow you, and then you only need to dunk it over on one side of the arena, and then dunk it on the other side of the arena, and you're pretty much done. So you dunk it twice. I think that's correct. I think it's just each side 1-2.
This was completely not soloable. And this is
you get the orb, and you basically could not get it there, and you had to get 2 of them. And it was theoretically feasible, but I didn't know anybody who had done it.
You couldn't move far enough because you would eventually get rooted, and then you couldn't throw the ball.
Because there's nobody to throw it to.
It just occurred to me that people who have never done this fight have no idea what we're talking about.
Sorry, guys. But no, it's basically, if you remember the Lady Vosh thing where they were trying to get balls into orb things, it's not a dissimilar idea.
You're playing basketball. You're playing basketball, except when you catch the ball, you're rooted and you have to throw it to a certain place. And you'd had to do with a partner. That's how it worked when it was new, because you would get
and because you had to do it with a partner, you basically couldn't solo because you would just be standard.
Yeah.
But so that means that Uldir is basically completely solo. If as long as you probably need to pass a couple of DPS checks, but it pretty much any class can solo. Battle for Desire Lore, Opulence we've talked about already before because I think, quite frankly, it's a fight that straight up traumatized him. But Hoarded Power buffs no longer gained after it casts Hoarded Power, so you don't have to you won't get destroyed before you can hit anything, essentially. The Hoarded Power buff's just not going to go onto Opulence, so the damage isn't going to spike. For the Conclave, duration of Crawling Hex is reduced to 5 seconds from I think it was, it says right here, 30 seconds.
It was like 30. Yeah, that polymorph really hurt. Just couldn't.
Yeah. If you're stuck in it for 30 seconds while they all hit you, it's
there's no way.
And lowest pact has been removed. Straight up, no lowest pact. So between the two changes there, Conclave goes from oh my god to okay, I can do this. Rastakhan doesn't get the zombie dust totem anymore, and the Buon Samedi portion of the fight doesn't have a DPS check anymore. It's pretty much once you get to the Buon Samedi phase, you're basically there's a little bit more to do, but it's not like. And for Jaina, this is one I found most interesting. You can continue to DPS Jaina during the flash freeze, and Jaina doesn't cast freezing. That's kind of the main mechanic of the fight, but I agree that you had to get rid of it because she wasn't soloable. Flash freeze just gave her too much. So yeah, what do you guys think? You think those are good changes for Battle of Desire Lore?
I do actually. It gives more access to people that are looking to solo that older content.
I'm just Liz.
Absolutely.
I know how you feel at Opulence. I know.
I could almost solo Opulence before these nerfs. I haven't tried in a long time, but I was really close. But if you go in, he gets so much power. It was such a tight DPS check, and I couldn't quite get there. I feel like I was close before I gave up.
Then you get a chance.
But yeah, it's kind of silly that content this old was still completely unsoloable, not necessarily because of lack of player skill or effort, but
straight up mechanics that required multiple people.
It was just insta-kill mechanics of various kinds.
Like Nyalotha has some changes as well. Nyalotha fight saw some significant changes, but we'll talk about Vexiona real fast. Terrifying Presence doesn't affect players during Vexiona's Heart of Darkness. That means you will not be running around like a chicken with your head off while she's casting a thing that's going to wipe you, which I think is nice because I remember a lot of times people dying on that fight because they were feared and couldn't stop running around. So I think that's a pretty solid. In the Zoth fight, however, you don't have to worry about a debuff, and you can enter the Mind Gates to kill Psychos every time. So the way it worked previously was you get a debuff, and so you couldn't go through the Mind Gate, which meant Psychos would just be blasting you because it's just you there, just blasting you without you being able to do anything to stop it. Now you can go in and kill them every time. You won't be mind controlled when you reach 0 energy. You do not need the legendary cloak. I can never pronounce this. Jirakamas. You don't need that legendary cloak to do the encounter without going insane. You just won't go insane. You will still get.
I'm over here being the person who has when it was current content gone into it without my cloak equipped, and that's a thing. Immediate mind control. Yeah,
they've decided no, that doesn't happen anymore. So that's cool because if maybe you don't have the cloak, like if this is a character you leveled after Battle for Azeroth, you might not have it. You might have just skipped that content entirely and don't have the cloak. Now it doesn't matter. And finally, which I think is really cool, the Gift of Zoth buff, you still get it, so you still get the damage bonus, but you just get 30 sanity back after it ends. You don't become a servant of N'Zoth. And if you happen to have a Heart of Azeroth, which most people, I think, if you've done any Battle for Azeroth, you'll have one. But I don't know if you can use it to restore your sanity as often as you like with only a 15-second cooldown, which means that sanity really shouldn't be a problem at all in the N'Zoth fight, other than the fact that they have a mechanic called sanity, which, I mean, it's kind of not great. But regardless, the N'Zoth fight is now much more. I don't think you could argue that it is significantly easier to do this fight. And this basically means that Battle for Azeroth's endgame is pretty much, I mean, I still think there's a bit of a problem with the Reckless Cabal, but the Restless Cabal and Promise of Power, that's still pretty bad. But pretty much everything else is now doable. I mean, and even that one's doable.
Yeah, I think the thing this makes everything potentially soloable. There are no like
by
hard
almost anyone.
roadblocks.
Yeah,
By almost anyone.
Yeah, you don't
It's
have to be
just-
you don't have to be like a very specific build with like certain talents you would never normally take. So yeah, I think that's great. Quite frankly, I feel like they should start considering doing this kind of stuff sooner. Like they have this idea that they should make it so that you don't get the scaling buff until like 2 expansions ago. So like the way things are now, you wouldn't get the you only get the scaling bonus up to Legion content. You wouldn't get it for Battle for Azeroth or Shadowlands. But I think it should have always been the case that it was just the last expansion. Because I don't know if people remember this, there's a scaling buff that you get when you do legacy content because you're otherwise your character wouldn't be powerful enough to solo it, which they should be able to do because it's one of those situations where if I'm so much higher geared, why can't I do this? So they put that in, but it only goes up to like, for example, right now it was only going up to Legion. And keep in mind that in Shadowlands, they had to nerf Legion content. In the same way. I don't think they should have to keep doing that. I don't think they should keep nerfing content halfway through, or in this case, 2/3 of the way through an expansion. I think you should just nerf it. Like, just if you want to have that scaling buff only applied to older content, 1 expansion ago is fine. I think there's no reason to make people have to like work super hard to get Battle for Azeroth gear. It's time, guys. It's not cutting edge anymore. Let this be soloable. So yeah, I think this is one of the better choices. Go ahead, Liz.
I mean, that crown that Opulence drops, that's really S tier transmog. So, I mean, maybe that was the whole thing. Transmog was so powerful that it had to be safe from those soloers trying to get their greedy hands on it. Now you can all do it if you just take some time and effort.
Okay. You're right. You are absolutely right. And I think, Joe, I think you pretty much agree, so I don't have to bother you too much for an answer.
Correct.
Okay. There's some stuff I forgot when we were talking about Mists of Pandaria, so I'm going to jump to that really fast. Jewelry and Trinket unlocks in Mists Remix or Remists is now account-wide, which means that once you get it on one character, all your other characters will get it too. The way that Remix does gear is something that I think I'm going to ask Joe because he hasn't been talking much. Give him a really quick breakdown of how gear works and why this change is important for Jewelry and Trinkets.
Well, the jewelry and trinkets require you to do basically meta achievements. So clear all the dungeons on Heroic, clear all the scenarios on Heroic, clear all the raids on Heroic. So if you had to unlock them on every single character, it would be exceptionally time consuming versus doing them once and then having them available for everybody. So it's just good. It's a better way of doing it with something that already was pretty, in my opinion, pretty accessible because, again, the content's not exactly... It's not like it used to be. The heroics are not as hard as they used to be. It really does feel like time walking, if anything.
Okay. So it's good that we got that covered really quick. This one I wanted to talk about. The War Within is getting a story difficulty, and I can't believe I forgot to put this in the post. Liz had to catch this. I'm really sorry, Liz. But this is really interesting because it's sort of like a one-time scenario, and you get to see the end fight, basically. From reading it, that's what it does. I may have misread it, and maybe you do the whole dungeon, but I don't think you do. I think you just do the end boss of a raid. And by doing that, you basically go in, you fight him, you get basically a version stripped down so that it's not as powerful as the raid. It's a scenario encounter. And when you are done, you get to see the cinematic and so forth. So you don't have to go to Dalaran and click a weird statue or go to Orgrimmar and click a big chunk of dragon or what have you. You do the scenario, you get to see the end boss, and that's it. You get the same experience story-wise as a mythic raider. Like, they get to see that you get this.
And also, it's an experience that scales. You can do it with from 1 to 5 players, so you can go in by yourself, or you can go in with a small group of friends, and just experience this without having to LFR, which is easier, but you have to deal with a lot of players. Not all of those players are necessarily great human beings that you want to spend time with. You can just go in and do it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, are they repeatable? I thought I saw that they weren't repeatable, but I can't remember now. Do you remember if they're repeatable? If they're not repeatable, Blizzard make them repeatable. This should absolutely be something you can read. You can go in with friends so they get to see it and you get to be in the group with them, that kind of thing. I think this is content that should definitely be.
It is repeatable.
Awesome. Okay. We already know that Cataclysm Classic is out, but the raids are launching Thursday this week. I believe you got it on. It's the first 3, the ones you remember them if you played during Cataclysm. It's Bastion of Twilight, Blackwing Descent, and Throne of the Four Winds. Throne of the Four Winds is the one with the Alakir fight. It's straight up, you go fight Alakir. You take him out and pave the way for Prince Thunderon to be the Lord of Air. Good job. Passion of Twilight is the Cho'Gall fight at the end. That's the one that is one of the funniest fights to tank, because first off, it's very hard. It's very hard to tank that fight. But also, the whole time, you've got one of them going, I'm trying to tell them. Words, words, words. The master wants murder. It's one of my favorite fights. I crack up every time. I remember, Joe, we were the same guild during this, weren't we?
Yes, we were.
I remember trying to do it on Mythic and having like his gigantic stuff like right in my face for most of the fight while he's saying these things, and Joe is like, I don't know what you were doing to keep me alive, because wow, I couldn't see anything happening. But yeah, Joe managed to keep me alive, and we did. I think we did get him on Mythic, didn't we?
Yes. Okay. We did eventually get him.
Yeah, I remember. I think I had the hammer. Anyway, yeah. So that's pretty cool, actually. Quite frankly, those are all pretty good raids. And if you've never done them before, you should definitely go check them out. I honestly think Blackwing Descent, it has got maybe some of the funniest dialogue of any raid in it. Specifically, the Maloriak, which on its hardest difficulty, I believe it's Mythic, is just you get a title that lasts 30 minutes, and the title is Slayer of Stupid, Incompetent Minions, or something to that effect.
You didn't even need to do it on Mythic. You get it as heroic if you do it in a time limit.
Oh, cool. Because it is. I love that title. I used to wander around with it until it wore off, being like, "Oh, I wanted to keep that." It's fun. So yeah. In addition, Warcraft Rumble season 6 is starting tomorrow. I'm gonna say at this point, Liz, I've never played it. Liz, I think you have, and I think you've got some notes. So I'm going to now kind of give you puppy dog eyes and beg you to talk about it.
So one thing, which is big but not big, is that guild sizes have increased. Guilds in Rumble have always been kind of weirdly small at 15 players, and there's a lot of content doing any of the raid content. You need to play with other players, but you can play with players in your guild, so 15 seemed a little limiting. Now it's all of 20, which is still pretty limiting, but it's more than 15. There's also a new Siege of Stormwind encounter, which is the first ever co-op experience coming to the game, so you play that with a friend. And also it will reward Valor, which is a new type of currency. And next week we will be getting the Molten Core raid, which Blizzard showed off in at BlizzCon this year, and because they've been real cagey about when we're gonna actually get to play it. So now finally Molten Core is coming to Warcraft Rumble in, kind of a cute chibi version of itself. And yes, Siege of Stormwind. I know Mitch is really excited about this. I've kind of fallen behind on the leveling curve because there's a lot of grinding to do to level things up. So I've had trouble keeping up there. There are so many games, and this one has really fallen off my list. Even though it does sound really cool, the Molten Core encounters look really cool. But yes, that's all launching tomorrow. Cool new stuff in Rumble, and I hope the game keeps improving, so that I can eventually, play it and not have to.
That would be nice.
It would be.
Speaking of grinding, Overwatch 2. No, sorry, that was mean. Basically, though, from what I understand from reading the post that was on Blizzard Watch, you can go and read posts on our site, Blizzard Watch. It's a site where we talk about Blizzard and its various games. Apparently, Overwatch has got its DreamHack fights coming up. It's like the championship. I'm not really sure what they're doing. Dreamhaven, it's the DreamHack esports tournament. My bad, didn't read this properly. But they're giving 25% of the sale of a Hanzo skin for the prize.
Liz, why don't you go ahead and explain that?
Yeah, so the thing is, Blizzard has kind of stopped doing its own Overwatch esports. It's sort of abandoned the whole Overwatch League idea, which was cool, but apparently didn't pan out as far as making money, I assume. So now DreamHack is a third-party organization that runs esports tournaments, and Blizzard is supporting their Overwatch prize pool by giving them 25% of the proceeds of a Hanzo skin they are currently selling, which sounds like not very much money.
No, it doesn't.
It's a cool blue Hanzo, so it's neat, but also they're donating 25% after, taxes and fees and etc. And that just doesn't seem like very much. And it's only on sale. It was started sale on May 21st, and it's only on sale through June 3rd. So it's a pretty short sale period. I guess they're trying to really kind of push you to buy now, buy now, buy now. But 25%, it doesn't sound like a whole lot to me. Anna, who wrote the post, said that most AAA esports events that crowdfund things like this with in-game tie-ins also do 25%.
Yeah, that's the
which is also
sort of the
disappointing.
standard.
Yeah. But what Anna said was, just because Riot jumps off a bridge doesn't mean that Blizzard should do it too. Which you could do a little better than 25%. Come on,
well, it's not just Riot; it's literally every AAA.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of your DreamHack fighter tournaments do the same thing. Like it's all over the place. So
I'm disappointed, but also you're kind of disappointed in everybody. If you're gonna do esports, you have to support it in some way, and you can support it better than 25% of a single scan.
The thing that I find fascinating is they're doing the same thing that Hasbro did. And not to bring it back to Hasbro because I'm just want to fight them.
Dun, 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 dun. Go on.
But it's one of those things where, with Magic the Gathering tournaments, Hasbro, when WotC was in charge of itself, they had these huge things, and WotC would pay the money for it, and they had their own judges, and they paid the judges, and then they decided they didn't want to pay the judges anymore, so a third party did it, and they gave support to the third party by giving them exclusive judge promo cards that you could only get for being a judge. And then, for the tournaments, they stopped doing tournaments. So another organization picked them up. Instead of having pro tours or pro tour qualifiers, now you have regional qualifiers that are run by a group called melee.gg. And they do other tournaments and stuff like that too. But it's everybody is stopping to support the games that sort of are the backbone of what they made them. And so I was very suspect when they stopped doing esports support for Overwatch, when they went through the last firing round of folks, that they basically let everybody that was esports related go. And it's because esports isn't as hot as it used to be. So they're just falling into the same pattern that all these other abandoned games and all these other companies that have abandoned their communities in this particular arena have done. They've just found somebody else to turf it to, and here's a pittance. Here's 25%, right? They could afford more. They don't, because it's not profitable. And it always sort of chafes me. It rankles a bit. That's my 2 cents. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I don't know when people. But yeah. So that's happening, and we've now talked about it, which is good because I had completely forgotten about it and hadn't even mentioned it. I think we've covered all that stuff. So one thing left before we do a couple emails. I had put in some stuff about Diablo 4 here, and Liz pointed out, Matt, we've talked about it a lot. And I was like, yes, but I do have something unique to talk about. And that is, there are a lot of small accessibility changes that I'm finding as I play Diablo 4. The first one was today. When I logged in last week, it didn't do this, but this week when I logged in, after it had downloaded the latest patch, there's now a feature that allows you to select highlighting. So you can have it be like it's been in Diablo 4 this whole time, where everything is dark unless there's a direct light source on you. Or if you're a blind jerk like me, you can highlight your character as if they have a light source basically constantly on them. So you can always see your character even if they're running through darkness. This is a huge deal for me. And the second I saw it and started running around here, I'm like, oh, this is a game changer. And I understand that most people probably wouldn't even think twice about it. But for me, Diablo 4 just got more playable. I don't have to have any of those moments where I can't figure out where my character is because they're just a little bit of light is hitting them and they're always lit up. I always know where they are. Does that kind of hurt the ambiance? Maybe. Does it mean that I know where my character is and don't just stand and fire or whatever for a second while I'm trying to figure out where they are? Yes. And I wanted to point it out because it is one of the things that I don't think Diablo 4 gets enough credit for, is that its accessibility efforts are ongoing and comprehensive. There's a lot of colorblind options. There's a lot of shading options. And this new option, they keep doing it, and they're all pretty good. I'm actually really happy about it. I'm really happy to see them continuing with it. So that much I felt we could still discuss. I think otherwise Liz is right that we've talked a lot of this stuff in the round. But that I wanted to mention because it is
Diablo 4
cool.
is interesting because it's like chiaroscuro Renaissance painting. It's beautiful. This game is beautiful. Every scene you see is like that. But it can be, hard to see anything because it is dark.
Yeah, and because its contrasts are very distinct.
Yes.
So a lot of things are like you're standing in an oil puddle sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Yeah. The color palette is a lot of grays and browns and stark whites. There's just not. Yeah, they're not a lot for pops of color except for Ethan's crazy look set.
Yeah, well, there's that.
That is all spring themed pastel colors that nothing else matches. I know, I've tried. This is a really great accessibility option.
Yeah, and they all have been. I've been really happy with them, so I did want to mention that. But at this point, I think we are going to move on and get to some of your questions, which I think is cool because sometimes we don't get to. If you've got a question for the show, you can go to our Discord. We have 2 channels there. We have a general, Q and podcast questions channel for just anybody who wants to ask a question, because we love you guys. You're our little guys who give us questions, and we enjoy that. But since we do need to make money via Patreon, that's something I'm going to probably mention at least once by the show's over. If you are a patron, you can use the patron Q and podcast questions channel because those get priority because you guys are helping keep the site going, which is why we have a podcast at all. So kudos to that. Or if you just want to send some emails in, you can email us at podcast@blizzardwatch.com. I think you can also ask us questions directly on Patreon, if I'm not mistaken.
You can, though.
They will probably not get to us right away. Yeah.
I cannot promise we will see them as quickly as we will if you do in Discord or email.
Yeah, if you go to Discord, it's much easier to questions to us immediately. But the first one is a kind of an old friend of the show, somebody I don't know and yet have known for quite a while now because they've asked quite a few questions. Hey, y'all, it's me, Yagalcorn. Kind of lacking in blood for the blood god lately, but I'm trying. Maybe Ariok could help. Anyway, let me ask a question. I keep wondering what gaming doesn't have that it should really have. Has gaming finally returned to embracing single-player games? It's one of my favorite kinds of game because I don't like playing games with other people, just like I don't like talking to other people, and I don't like being around other people, and I kind of am afraid of people. I know a lot of people like massively multiplayer games or MOBAs. I don't know what MOBA is.
MOBAs.
Okay. MOBAs or what have you. I'm like, giant birds? I mean, I like giant birds. Or what have you. And I'm one of them, despite not necessarily liking people. Anyway, do you think we're going to get more single-player games? Do you think we could get a really good single-player RPG in the Warhammer setting? Not Warhammer 40K, they got Rogue Trader. And what other franchises do you think could really benefit from a single-player game of some kind? Hugs to you all, and I hope your blood stays inside you because I would miss you. Corn.
That's where it belongs, really.
Yeah. Either you want to go on this one?
Yeah, I guess I have some opinions. So gaming is at a point where diversity is sort of the name of the game now. We sort of progressed past the era, at least in my opinion, where everything needs to follow everything else. Not everything needs to be an MMO. Not everything needs to be a MOBA. We kind of went through all those phases, right? Where everything had to be the WoW killer or everything had to be the League of Legends killer. There's room for everything. And there's room now, and you're starting to see it with a lot of independent games. And I'm getting into this. I'm talking with my hands, and y'all can't see this at home, so I'm getting animated. There's room for all these other types of games. We see shop simulators are becoming more popular again. We see visual novels are still around and going strong. ARPGs are still going strong. Roguelikes are going strong. All of these are finding their niches and their communities and the crossbleed therein. So I don't think gaming needs anything more particular except for one thing. I think RTSs need to make a comeback on PCs and consoles in a more mainstream way. I think it's been far too long. Yes, I understand that they exist on mobile, and that's perfectly fine. But I don't play mobile games. I really don't. And then we talked about this with Diablo Immortal. I play it on the PC. I don't play it on my computer, my phone. The closest I ever gotten was Marvel's Snap, and that is a whole separate entity. But I would like to see a really well done RTS come back into a prominent form on the PC. And we've talked about this in the past where there's some coming down the line, but they're not here yet. And I want them. And I want to experience them and play them and have fun like I did back when I was in college. So that's my opinion on that. And the second thing, if we were to do another single player RPG set in the Warhammer setting, it has to be Mordheim. Mordheim, for those of you at home, is what happens if you were to take high fantasy with high magic and a lot of chaos and demons and stuff like that, and shove the Fallout universe of post-apocalyptics like together into a head-on collision. Mordheim is ancient before Fallout ever existed, and it is essentially the Fallout Chernobyl of the Warhammer fantasy world, where warp stones exploded, the city has been destroyed, and now it is a wasteland of magic and mutation. And you could do a lot of really cool stuff there, because in the universe in Mordheim, people go there trying to find lost treasures, hidden scrolls, magic books that, once existed but don't anymore, people have lost track of, ancient relics, and maybe pieces of warpstone itself in order to progress magic or society or whatever MacGuffin they're looking for. But it's really, really cool, and it's fallen to the wayside over the number of years since we've moved away from Warhammer Fantasy and into Age of Sigmar. I would like to see maybe coming back to that like we did with Blood Bowl, but let it be a single player RPG where you are maybe in charge of a hunting party or a war band. Have it be maybe some of the Greedfall elements in there, which, Matt, I'm sure he could talk about for forever, because we talked about Greedfall for a while. I think that's really ripe for exploration. So those are my two opinions on it. I will now put my hands down, shut my mouth, and let other people talk.
Liz?
I feel like the problem with single player games, and we have gotten some really great single player games lately. Though I say lately, and my brain's remembering of lately and actual lately are probably two different things. But I think the problem they have, and I love a good single player game. The problem is that when companies make them, let's look at Horizon Forbidden West, which I want to say that's a recent game, even though I know it's not.
It is in the past few years.
It is absolutely a recent game.
I mean, it was original release was competing with Elden Ring. The latest
2 years
expansion.
ago. It was 2 years ago.
2 years. Okay. Oh, only 2 years. Well, it's a huge blockbuster game. Games like this take so much time, so many resources to develop that, it's like hard to commit to a game like that when it's like you're releasing the game and you're releasing a DLC and then you're done. Like we saw Cyberpunk 2077 released a tiny bit sooner than it should have, but it was a single game purchase for the whole thing. It had a great DLC, and then it was done. I can see how it's very difficult for big companies to say, okay, we're going to put all of our hopes and dreams into this game. It's a single purchase. It's not an ongoing revenue stream.
Yeah.
So for game developers, for game publishers, it's very appealing to say, I'm going to do an MMO with a subscription and microtransactions. I'm going to do a live service game. Something, it has to have purchases. It has to have an ongoing revenue stream. And this has become really baked into early game development, where they're thinking not only how can we make this great game, but how can we make this great game make money? And sometimes making money gets in the way of making a great game. But I think we see fewer single player RPGs because everyone wants to make a blockbuster. If Sony's making a single player RPG, it can't just be some, dinky little thing, because it's Sony. You have expectations.
Yeah, look at how much effort it took to get Baldur's Gate 3 out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the game released in early access like 2021. I want to say
a ridiculous amount of time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, when it came out, finally, it's a masterpiece. Even if you don't like, I don't like turn-based without a real-time with pause option, or some kind of really good siege AI, swarm AI, something that makes it so that I don't spend 5 minutes watching a bunch of goblins make a move. Like I can't. It drives me nuts. I literally start chewing on my own tongue because of I cannot watch these goblins each move 30 feet and then stop. Oh my God, just get me to the point where I get to go. I don't care if the computer is having its turn. but still a masterpiece. It's still an amazing. But it is not just hard for that reason, like the amount of effort it takes to make them. It's hard because without the purchasables, without the monetization, there's a lot of pressure to put the game out faster.
Yeah.
And this has been a problem in the industry for a long time. I mean, talk to somebody sometime, about, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines or Fallout New Vegas or
a dozen other games.
Yeah, like Knights of the Old Republic 2. Games that got pushed out in like 18 months or less. And some, it's really hard because you have to, like Liz mentioned, Cyberpunk 2077 came out too early. It came out too early because they were feeling tremendous pressure to get it out. I mean, and there had been they'd been working on that game for a decade at that point. I think the first time I heard about it was in 2014, but I mean, they've been working on it for a long time. Obviously, things change while you're working on a game that long, and that's another problem. If you are spending a lot of time on development, things change in the industry, and suddenly you have to adapt to those changes. I remember reading about the Duke Nukem Forever. What's a good word for that? Catastrophe? Debacle? Do you think debacle? Yeah, debacle. We'll go with debacle. Apparently, Broussard, who was a big deal over at 3D Realms, every time a new version of something would come out, whether it was a new game that was of the same type or a new engine or anything, he'd want to switch to that.
Yep, every time.
And as a result, they stopped letting him read. They were like, we got to keep him from reading about this. Unreal 2's coming out. We can't let him know that. Like, God, he's going to want to switch to it. So yeah, these are all things that really affect the industry. I will say this though. I'm going to say this right now. If we're talking about games that I think could use a really good, solid single player game, I would say I would really, really, really like to see. I straight up, I want to see a StarCraft game. I've wanted StarCraft Ghosts since like 2000. I know you canceled it. I don't care. If you're not going to put, quite frankly, Blizzard has let RTS games go.
Yeah.
And that's insane.
Yep.
That's like, imagine going back in time to 1997 and saying, hey, Blizzard is going to do a Diablo game that's essentially a multiplayer game. What? What do you mean by that? Well, yeah, you can still play it solo, but yeah, there's multiplayer stuff. That doesn't make sense. But don't worry, they're going to completely stop making RTSs. What? But that's everything they do. So yeah. It feels very strange that we have all these companies doing RTSs and none of them are Blizzard.
I agree.
I heard you talking. So I'm shutting up.
I do have kind of a side note, which is that Summer Game Fest is next week, and we know Blizzard's going to be there. Anyone want to put bets on getting some really cool StarCraft announcement?
I'm not betting on that.
Oh,
as much as I want it, I don't want to be disappointed.
Yeah, I know. I hate the hype train, but also, I love to be surprised. I mean, I guess that's the great thing about gaming, is where you can have these moments where you're surprised and delighted. You can have moments where you're angry, but they are afraid, but they elicit a feeling. They bring something new to your life. And I love it when a game developer comes at me with something that's maybe fantastic, and I didn't know it was there. I didn't know I wanted it. But yeah, I hope something is coming this next week that is surprising and delightful.
I'm however forced to tell my story of being surprised and not delighted. In 2018, I noticed when we were trawling for posts, Liz had put in a thing about them starting a Diablo comic. So I looked at the Diablo comic, and the first thing I noticed was that it was about Lilith. And the next thing I noticed was that it was written by Marv Wolfman, who is the writer of, amongst other things, the original New Teen Titans, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and a whole lot more. Big deal in the industry. I think he's passed, but if he hasn't, good. I think we should keep him for years, and if he has, I'm really sorry. He's a great guy. But anyway, I saw that they were having him write it, and that it was Lilith. And I said, Diablo 4 is coming, and it's going to be about Lilith. So I put a lot of my prestige, such as it is. I mean, we do a website about it. I'm not international financier, but nevertheless, I put a lot online saying, yeah, we're going to get Diablo 4 this year. Cue to BlizzCon 2018, when we don't get Diablo 4, we get Diablo Immortal. And they've canceled the comic book. There's no sign it ever existed. They've practically scourged it from the web. My post about it is one of the 3 posts still there. And everyone thinks, oh yeah, you thought it was going to be Lilith. And I'm like, Yeah, I guess I did. Boy, I feel stupid. Cutting out of 2019, I literally almost lost it. I'm at my first BlizzCon and possibly only BlizzCon ever. I'm sitting in the audience and the Diablo 4 cinematic plays, and who's at the end of it but Lilith? And I actually jumped up and said, I knew it! And pointed at somebody. I don't know who that guy was, and I'm sorry, sir, but I just had to. So I kind of both of those things that Liz was. But I mean, unless you guys have time for one more, I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah. I don't know. We are at time.
All right. Liz, you got anything else to say? Sometimes we have endgame stuff you want to mention or site business.
No, I think just the usual. Thank you, everyone here who supports us. Please keep supporting us. Patreon keeps us alive and going, and I appreciate every single one of you.
Okay. Joe, could you do your thing? Because you mentioned our Patreon address in it.
I will, because Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, better chance at having your question answered on our podcast for the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everybody listening. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. We are going to be back next week, so hopefully you'll be there with us.